So I'll start by saying my name is Norma Akerd, and I am a student at Concord University in the Educational Research class, Education 210. Do I have your consent to video this interview?
Yes.
Okay. My first question is, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Herbert Eanes. I'm a 19-year veteran teacher. I teach at Wyoming East High School in Wyoming County, West Virginia, and I teach English language arts.
Great. And how long have you been in the education field?
Well, I've been teaching for 19 years. Most of that has been in secondary school, but I also have experience in post-secondary.
Perfect. And then what led you to your career in the education field?
I was a graphic designer before I became a teacher, and I was inspired to leave that job because I simply just wanted to use my content knowledge to help improve the lives of kids. So I left, and there was no looking back, and here I am 19 years later.
Great. How did educational research play a role in your professional education, whether that be in college or things that you did after school with professional development?
Well, my entire job is based around research. So both in what I've done with research and pursuing my doctorate, and then also in teaching, because I use the data from my research to steer the design of my curriculum and how I teach. I'm not sure if that completely answers your whole question, but I have used research in the past to help me figure out what I'm going to teach and how I'm going to teach it. I've also used it to help me make changes in the landscape of English language arts curriculum.
Okay. And how do you currently use research in your classroom?
So in my classroom now, I use research to teach students how to go and establish credibility with the arguments they create, because I'm finding now that many students just simply don't know how to support arguments, and in teaching them how to research, then I'm actually teaching them a scientific method of going out, finding information to use to support whatever assertions they come up with. It also teaches them how to defend themselves, because not in a physical sense, but I don't believe that they're really taught how to make an assertion and then defend it with evidence. And so this makes them go out and find the evidence that they need that will lend them some credibility. Also, we use it in the classroom a lot of times just to help students learn that there's a body of knowledge out there that needs to be expanded upon, because research is a living thing. It never really dies. Even today, any research paper that's written, this time tomorrow, that same paper could be taken up and then explored in a different way. It's how we end up with advancements in literature and science and math. It's just that research is such an important tool in everyday life. And so in my classroom, I use it not just as a footnote, not just as a hallmark assignment, so to speak. I use it and teach it because I believe it's just a necessary skill, not only for kids to learn to help them become better writers and better thinkers, but also become productive members of society.
Great. Do you use certain types of data that you collect from your students?
So in my classroom, I use primarily data that's gathered from end-of-course tests. So the ACT, the SAT, any College Board-based exams like the AP exams, or any end-of-course tests like what West Virginia used to have with the SMART assessments.
Great. Do you use data to determine the content that you teach?
I do. In fact, I really don't have a lot of wiggle room as far as what I can teach, because most of what I teach is based solely off of data. So if the numbers or the scores from our tests show that we have deficiencies in particular areas, then I have to go back and redesign my curriculum to where I'm covering those skills and, really making sure that I'm getting those skills across. When I first started teaching when was that, 2002, I believe, I didn't have to use data. In fact, I would just go into a classroom with a book and with a list of things I wanted to teach, and that's what I did. Now it's all about scores. It's about making sure that we not only meet expectations, but we exceed them, and then we maintain some level of proficiency from year to year. So I would say that now, compared to 18, 19 years ago, back then, I would say most of my research or most of my data maybe made up 5% of what I do, and now I would say it's 95% of what I do.
Great. So if you think about educational research, do you think it's going to change in the future? And then if so, in what ways do you think it'll be different?
I'm sorry, could you restate the question?
Sure. Do you think that educational research will change in the future? And if so, in what ways?
I'm really afraid that in the future, research, educational research itself will be fine, I think, but using research in the classroom, I don't want to say that it's going to die out completely, because I don't think that's even possible. But I don't believe that many teachers now place a lot of emphasis on teaching research skills, because those skills usually aren't covered on end of course tests. For instance, like the ACT, the SAT, they will probably ask questions about formatting, maybe, possibly, but typically you don't see those types of questions. And so, the movement in the past 5 years has been, if it's not something that's necessary or useful, we just don't cover it. And I'm really afraid that in the future, what we're going to see is this dying off. The danger in that, and this kind of alludes to what I said earlier, is that if we lose those skills, then the body of knowledge that we have now will not continue to grow. We'll just have this kind of stagnant way of thinking. And I think you have to have research there, and you have to teach it, because it teaches kids that it's okay to question what they have come to expect as the norm. It's okay to go out there and test new theories. If we don't have that, then the only knowledge we have is what we have right now. And if we're using research to, well, I'll just say, for lack of a better term, to create new knowledge, if we don't have that in place, then we're not really growing. And so I think in teaching it, it helps the kids become better thinkers and better writers. I think its future looks kind of bleak, but I hold out hope that we don't lose that, and that more and more teachers, especially non-ELA teachers, I hope they start to see the value in it. We use research, and as in we, ELA teachers, for MLA literary analysis papers. I know scientists use research, and I know mathematicians use research. I think it's across the board, but I don't believe it has to be the hallmark method used in just ELA. When we look across the disciplines, I think every discipline would find value in incorporating research somewhere into the design of curriculum. So the future may look bleak, but I think if all disciplines take up the charge and start to find the value in research and actually teach it, then I think research could have a very bright future.
Great. My last question for you is, what advice do you give a new teacher about using educational research?
Okay, so my first piece of advice is, if you go into the classroom believing that educational research is not valuable, you are kidding yourself, because everything that you do in the classroom is going to be based solely off of data. And even if you're not involved in core testing, you're not involved in the SAT or the ACT, then the data you gather from assessments alone is enough to drive the way you design your curriculum. So just to walk into a classroom and say, well, I just don't need this. Just, this is something for ELA or math. I just think, as a new teacher, you're setting yourself up for failure. The second thing I would say is that any kind of research that you can use to improve your overall performance in the classroom it has to be valuable. Welcome it. If you walk into the classroom believing that you don't need it, as I said, I think you set yourself up for failure. But then also, I think if you have research presented to you and you don't use it, then you also set yourself up for failure. As a new teacher coming in, you're going to think that you know everything because you have all this knowledge. And, a lot of new teachers, especially very young teachers, come in thinking, well, I have the degree and I have this content knowledge and I just simply don't need to do anything else except, take what's in here and give it out to the kids. And that's not really showing growth. I think as an educator, we only get better in the ways that we grow based off of what we see in the classroom. And, if we're treating each classroom as an experiment, the data that we gather from research is what makes us into better teachers. We use that data to help drive the design of our curriculum. We help that, or it helps us design our pedagogical methods. So I would say that any information that comes your way to make you into a better teacher, grab hold of it and use it. And hopefully in the end, it does help you become a better educator.
Great. Well, Mr. Eanes, I wanted to thank you for your time today and giving me some great knowledge for this assignment. Again, this was an interview for my Education 210 class at Concord University, and I just wanted to say thank you again.
You're welcome.